After half a century of communism, the levels of religious practice in Cuba are lower than anywhere else in Latin America. Catholic Church authorities themselves estimate the percentage of practicing Catholics in Cuba in the low single digits, but that statistic doesn't adequately reflect the prestige that Catholicism continues to have in Cuban culture. And that's one reason why on this pilgrimage that Pope Benedict will be making to Cuba, political and social issues will be inevitably intertwined with the devotional themes that he addresses. It's no accident that after the fall of the Soviet patrons at the end of the 1980s, that the Castro regime, after a period of official atheism, started becoming warmer toward the Catholic Church. And that culminated in 1998 with the visit of John Paul II. And the sight of Fidel Castro, no longer in his guerrilla fatigues, but in a business suit, respectfully greeting the Roman pontiff as he got off the plane, was a sight that observers of the revolution would have been hard-pressed to imagine. That trip raised a lot of expectations that it would usher in a period of democratization, just as John Paul's dramatic trips to his native Poland had done. That obviously hasn't happened. So here we are in 2012, with Fidel's younger brother and heir, Raul Castro, as the head of the regime. And he'll be meeting with Pope Benedict, and no doubt hoping that Benedict reiterates the Church's longstanding opposition to the US-led embargo on Cuba, which Benedict believes harms ordinary people in Cuba more than it does the leaders of the dictatorship. The Pope on this trip is quite likely to declare publicly the heroic virtues of Father Felix Varela, who was a 19th century Cuban campaigner against slavery. He was also the inspiration about a decade and a half ago for the Proyecto Varela, which was a Cuban democratization initiative calling for free elections and other reforms. And the leaders of that initiative were imprisoned by the regime in 2003. Now, their wives and mothers and sisters started a practice of marching peacefully in protest after Sunday Mass at Havana's Church of St. Rita of Cascia. The religious symbolism here is interesting because St. Rita was a 15th century Italian woman who forgave the murderers of her husband. So that underscores the peaceful nature of this resistance. Now, the ladies of white have publicly asked Pope Benedict to meet with them while he's in Cuba, and they'll plan to attend his Mass in Havana on Wednesday, his last day in the country. Now, for Benedict, this trip is, of course, above all, a pilgrimage. He's going to Cuba to mark the 400th anniversary of the Virgin of Charity of El Cobre. And we know that charity is a very important theme for him. It was the subject of his first encyclical, Deus Caritas Est. Benedict is likely to repeat his earlier calls for the Church in Cuba to have more freedom to practice its charitable works there. This may seem like an unremarkable request by a pope, but if you think about it, there could be no more powerful indictment of a regime that has staked its legitimacy on its supposed ability to provide for the material needs of ordinary people than to demonstrate that that regime needs the Catholic Church, supposedly the source of superstition and oppression and backwardness, that it needs the Catholic Church's help to care for its poor.